My scariest encounter took place along a country road while wearing a Cinderella costume. I've never felt as utterly vulnerable as I did that day. For years, I've had a job as a party princess. For the uninitiated, that means I'm one of the girls that dresses up like a Disney princess and entertains young girls at birthday parties. I sing, I smile, and I sparkle my way into their princess-loving hearts. Most of my business comes from word of mouth. Typically, the parents of a girl who attended somebody else's party would hire me to host a party for their own kid. But sometimes, I'll get hired by someone who found me from my social media. This situation began during my slow season for party gigs. I received a DM on Instagram from a woman asking about my prices. I state them pretty clearly on my pages, but some clients aren't as tech-savvy as others, so I indulged her. She asked if I would accept payment via Walmart gift cards. That should have been a red flag, but like I said, it was slow season. She explained she had a stack of cards she was trying to make use of. And the truth is, those cards are as good as cash to me. Of course, I was skeptical that it might be a scam, so we agreed that she'd mail them to me beforehand so I could verify they were real. She did, and they checked out. I agreed to do the party, but I did have some worries about how far away the house was located, mainly because I have some concerns about my car's lack of dependability. Anyone that's ever owned a junker is familiar with the struggle of never knowing if you'll actually make it from point A to point B. My car was the epitome of unreliable. The passenger door was misaligned from a fender bender. The trunk was held down with a length of rope, and by far the most annoying of them all, the driver's side door wouldn't open from inside the car. I had to roll down the window and open the door using the outside handle. When I found the mailbox, I parked on the rural road at the top of the long, winding driveway. There's a ton of tricks that go into maintaining the illusion of being a real princess. And one of them is never let the kids see you driving a car. This goes doubly if you drive a rundown piece of crap like mine. Instead, you park out of view and tell the kids your carriage dropped you off. As I dragged my portable speaker down the dirt road, I noticed the lack of cars. Usually they litter the length of the driveway and spill onto the street, but I could see the house in the distance and there wasn't a single car in sight. Then I noticed the lack of decorations on the exterior of the house. My services as a party princess are not cheap. I don't mean to brag, but I charge on the higher end of what the market can bear, so I'm used to my clients going all out with decorations and theming. When I got to the door, I started second-guessing the information I had. I messaged the client that I had arrived, then I put my phone away. Smartphone usage is another big no-no when it comes to maintaining the princess illusion. I knocked on the door, and nobody answered. As I stood there, that uneasy feeling of being watched started creeping over me. I made an effort to push that feeling aside and knocked again. Crickets. Literally, in fact. I was at an empty house in the middle of nowhere, dressed in the least practical clothing imaginable. There were no signs of a party, no sounds of a party, and increasingly no hopes of a party. I took one last look around and gave up. As I walked back to my car, I tried to piece together the situation. Did I somehow delete a message with an updated address? Did her message get filtered into the junk section? I checked my social media, but nothing turned up. And unfortunately, this was the only contact information I had for her. I loaded up my stuff, got back in my car. But as soon as I started driving, I realized that something wasn't right. The car was pulling hard to the side, and the ride was much bumpier on the way out than it had been on the way in. I pulled onto the shoulder of the road and went back through the tedious process of rolling down my window so I could open up the driver's side door. I exited the car to take a look, and sure enough, I had a flat tire. As embarrassing as this is to admit, I didn't know how to change it. In fact, I wasn't even sure I had all the necessary tools. As I stood there contemplating what to do, another vehicle pulled up alongside me. It was a man in his late 30s. He asked if I needed any help, and I told him I did. He then reversed behind my car, got out, and walked over. He was an average-looking guy wearing casual clothes and heavy work boots. I undid the rope on my trunk, and we looked inside to see if I had the equipment we needed for the job. He started grabbing tools and handing them to me. He grabbed the spare tire and carried it to the side of my car. He set down the spare, and I held out the tools for him to take. But then he surprised me by telling me he wasn't going to change the tire for me. Instead, he was going to teach me how to do it for myself. He must have seen the disappointment in my face, because he immediately quoted the saying about teaching a man to fish. I told him I'd have to change into my street clothes. In response, he simply turned and looked the other direction. I carefully changed, keeping an eye on him while I did. He asked if I was going to a costume party, and I explained that I was an entertainer for children's birthday parties. We continued making small talk as I changed into leggings, a t-shirt, and tennis shoes. While he never overtly looked back at me, I sensed he was sneaking a peek whenever he had an opportunity. Once I got situated, he had me start by loosening the lug nuts, which was much harder than I expected. I had to literally stand on the tire iron to get them to budge. As I went about loosening them, I looked over. The man was sitting sideways in the driver's side seat of my car, leering at me. I suddenly became very self-conscious about my isolation and how vulnerable I was. He then had me raise the car with the jack, explaining where to put it and how to operate it. Then he had me remove the lug nuts from the tire. I piled them neatly in a row next to the car and then pulled off the flat. I then grabbed the spare and placed it onto the exposed bolts. I was putting the lug nuts back on and tightening them with my fingers when I noticed one was missing. I glanced around, and the man pointed out that it must have rolled underneath my vehicle. I looked beneath the car, and sure enough, there it was, just out of reach. As I stared at the lug nut, the man warned me to lower the car before I tried to grab it. I went back to the jack and started cranking it down. As I did, I contemplated the situation. The ground was flat where I put the lug nuts, and I was careful to neatly line them up so I didn't lose any. The only explanation I could come up with was that the man intentionally knocked one beneath the car. Either he was a creep who wanted to perv on me while I crawled under for it, or he had dangerous intentions and wanted me in a compromised position. My fight or flight instincts kicked into overdrive. I guess the man was probably faster than me, but I felt like I could outrun him if I had enough of a lead. And then, with my heart pounding, I came up with an idea. I asked the man if he could grab my towel under the passenger seat so I wouldn't get dirty crawling beneath the car. I was hoping that, in the process of grabbing it, he would sit straight in the seat. I was right, he did. I quickly closed the broken driver's side door, knowing he'd temporarily be trapped inside, and I ran. I made it to a neighbor's house without any sight of him. I called my father. He came to pick me up. We went back to my car, and the man was gone. We finished changing the tire, and my dad followed me home. When I got back, I got a message from the client telling me she got stuck at work and needed to reschedule the party. I immediately blocked her. I suspected she was actually the man with the truck, and that he was catfishing me the entire time. That night, as I was unpacking my costume, I noticed my princess gloves were missing. I searched my bag, but they were nowhere to be found. I suspect the creeper took them as a souvenir. And with that, Mr. Backwoods Catfisher, let's not meet again.